Every serial killer used to have one advantage: time. The gap between a murder and getting caught could stretch for years, decades, sometimes forever. That gap is almost gone now. This is the story of how it closed. One broken alibi, one floppy disk, one DNA match at a time. Each new tool took away something a killer used to count on. In 1888, a man murdered 11 women in London. He left blood at the scenes. He left bodies in the open. He even mailed letters to the press, taunting the police who were hunting him. And still, he got away. Not for a week. Not for a year. Forever. His name was never confirmed. His face was never seen by history. Newspapers printed his crimes for millions of readers, and it changed nothing. Some researchers argue that if he committed those same murders today, he'd be identified within days. Not because investigators got smarter, because the tools changed completely. This is the story of that change, and it starts with a total failure. A constable named Robert Paul saw a man near one of the bodies minutes after the murder. He gave a description: dark coat, red tie, about 5'7". Police wrote it down. Then they let him go. Why? Because that description matched thousands of men in London. There was no way to narrow it down. No fingerprint, no blood type, no way to link a face to a crime scene. Investigators had eyes and instinct, nothing else. Within hours, another woman was found dead. Scotland Yard chased hundreds of leads through fog-lit streets and narrow alleys. Suspects were pulled in and released, again and again, because nothing could prove one man's guilt over another's. Witnesses gave conflicting descriptions of height, of clothing, of faces half seen in the dark. Some said tall, some said short, some said a gentleman's coat, others said rags. None of it matched. The killings didn't stop for 3 months. Then they just stopped. No arrest, no trial, no name. The case went cold, and it stayed cold. Because in 1888, catching a killer meant getting lucky. And luck ran out. Then something shifted. Before fingerprints, police tried measuring people instead. Skull size, arm length, foot size. The idea was that no two bodies were built exactly alike. It worked, sometimes. But records got mixed up. Measurements got taken wrong. It was slow, and it was easy to get wrong. In the 1920s, departments switched to something simpler: fingerprints. No two people share the same prints, and every fingertip leaves a mark that can't be taken back. In 1928, a man named Albert Fish confessed to murdering a child. Confessions alone weren't always trusted. People lied. People took credit for crimes they didn't commit. But this time, investigators had something to check his story against. His fingerprints matched a scene. The case was no longer just his word. It was proof, and he was executed the following year. For the first time, a crime scene could talk. Capture rates started climbing. Killers who once vanished into crowds now left evidence behind without knowing it. But there was still a catch. Fingerprints only worked if you already had a suspect standing in front of you. You still had to find him first. By the 1960s, investigators tried something new. Instead of just chasing evidence, they started studying killers themselves. What did they want? How did they choose victims? Did they follow a pattern? The FBI built an entire unit around this idea, treating killers almost like a species to be studied. It became known as behavioral profiling, and it led straight to one of the most dangerous men in American history. Ted Bundy killed women across several states. He was well-spoken. He didn't look like anyone's idea of a killer. For a while, that worked in his favor. Police in different states had no idea they were chasing the same man. The murders looked like separate cases, unconnected, until profilers noticed something. Same victim type, same method, same behavior, over and over. In 1975, that pattern helped bring him down. It still wasn't over. Bundy escaped custody twice, once by jumping out a courthouse window. He kept killing while free, proving that even a strong profile couldn't guarantee an ending. Around the same time, a new database let police departments share case details across state lines for the first time. A murder in one state could suddenly be linked to a murder 1,000 miles away. The killers were still moving, but now, so was the information. In the 1980s, scientists figured out how to read DNA left behind at a crime scene. A single hair, a drop of blood. It could tie a person to a crime with near certainty. The first murder ever solved this way happened in England, and it did something nobody expected. It cleared a wrongly accused suspect while pointing to the real killer instead. In the early 1990s, a man named Jeffrey Dahmer confessed to killing 17 people over more than a decade. Confessions like his were often met with doubt. How do you confirm something that horrifying actually happened the way someone describes? DNA testing gave investigators a way to check. One by one, his claims were verified against physical evidence. But here's the uncomfortable part. His arrest didn't come from DNA. It came from a victim who escaped and ran straight to police. The science confirmed the crimes. It didn't catch the man. Soon after, DNA databases let labs compare one sample against thousands of others at once. Matches that once took months, waiting on backlogged labs and paperwork, started coming back in hours. Cold cases from decades earlier suddenly had new leads, reopened by evidence that had been sitting in storage the entire time. But killers were adapting too. Gloves, bleach, no prints, no hair, no trace left behind. The gap started closing, and the killers knew it. On January 18, 2005, police arrested a man named Dennis Rader. For 31 years he had killed and mailed taunting letters to the press, describing himself by his own chosen initials, standing for how he treated his victims. He held a position of trust in his community. Church council president. A city compliance officer, the kind of person whose job was making sure other people followed the rules. Nobody suspected him. He went quiet for years at a time, then resurfaced with another letter, just to prove he was still out there. His downfall came from something almost laughably small. He mailed police a computer disk. Hidden inside that disk was metadata, information about exactly which computer created the file. Investigators traced it to a church, to one specific machine, to him. 31 years of silence, undone by a piece of hidden data he didn't even know existed. After that, digital evidence became just as powerful as anything found at a crime scene. Every file, every device, all of it could talk now. But one more question remained. What happens when a killer confesses to nearly 100 murders and nobody believes him? Samuel Little told investigators he had killed 93 people over 3 decades. 93. For years, almost nobody took him seriously. Many of his victims' deaths had originally been ruled accidental. Overdoses. Undetermined causes. Nobody even knew most of them were murders. Then FBI analysts began matching his confessions against unsolved cases, using details only the killer could know. A DNA match from an earlier arrest linked him to 3 killings in California. That was the thread that unraveled everything else. In his cell, Little began drawing his victims from memory. Careful pencil portraits, released publicly, so families might finally recognize a face and put a name to someone who'd been missing for decades. Investigators confirmed dozens of his murders this way. He became the most prolific confirmed serial killer in American history, not because he was caught in the act, because the system finally learned how to listen. Then came a case that changed everything. For 40 years, one man committed murders and assaults across California and left almost nothing behind. No match, no suspect, no name. He struck in the 1970s and 80s, before computers, before surveillance cameras, before any of this technology existed. Investigators tried and failed for decades, and the case grew colder every year. What made it worse was who he turned out to be: a former police officer. The exact kind of person trained to know how investigations work and how to avoid leaving anything behind. In 2018, someone tried a method nobody had used this way before. They uploaded crime scene DNA to a public genealogy website, a place where ordinary people upload their own DNA just to find long-lost relatives, not to catch a killer. The sample matched a distant cousin, then a closer one. Investigators built out a family tree, branch by branch, eliminating names one at a time. Within days, they had an address, a face, a name: Joseph James D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, responsible for over a dozen murders and dozens more assaults. Caught not because his own DNA was on file anywhere. Caught because his family's was, and they never knew it. He later pleaded guilty rather than face trial, describing his own crimes in his own words after 40 years of silence. Since that case, hundreds of cold cases once considered permanently unsolvable have been reopened and closed the same way. Genetic ghosts, hunted down through people they never even met. You'd think that's where the story ends. Total surveillance. Cameras on every corner. Phones tracking every step. Facial recognition scanning crowds in real time. Genetic databases connecting strangers to killers decades later. It should be over. Killers should have nowhere left to hide. But in 2017, 2 teenage girls were murdered on a hiking trail in Indiana. Investigators had cell phone video. They had a grainy image of a suspect caught on camera. And still, the case sat unsolved for 5 years. Not because the technology failed, because a single tip, written down just days after the murders, got mislabeled and buried in a filing system. It sat there, forgotten, for half a decade, while investigators searched everywhere except the one folder that already had the answer. A records clerk found it by accident in 2022, while sorting through thousands of other leads collected over the years. That one rediscovered piece of paper is what finally led investigators to a suspect, later matched by forensic evidence to the crime scene. All that technology, all that surveillance. And the case nearly stayed cold anyway, because of a mistake as old as paperwork itself. That's the pattern, if you look back far enough. Victorian police thought a detailed description was enough. It wasn't. Departments in the 20th century thought fingerprints were enough. They weren't. A generation later, they thought DNA closed every gap. It didn't. Today, we assume cameras and algorithms and genetic databases mean nobody can disappear anymore. History has said that exact same thing before, every single time, right before something slipped through anyway. A file, a signal, a person nobody was looking at closely enough, standing right where anyone could see them. So maybe the real question was never how we catch them. Maybe it's how many will slip through the next gap, the one we haven't built a tool for yet, the one nobody's found.